This is the County of Santa Clara Public Safety and Justice Committee regular meeting, September 3rd, 2020, 2 p.m. by virtual teleconference.
Hey, Sylvia. Hey, Susan, Laura.
Supervisor Wasserman, nice to see you.
It's nice to see you. How are you?
Hard to see you. I need my sunglasses, I think, Susan. Rocking the bling. Or blinging the rocks. I'm not sure what that is.
You know, it's a counter to the gym shorts.
Exactly.
That I'm also wearing.
That's right. I love it. You could start a great new trend.
Yes.
I don't think it's even new. All right, it is 2 o'clock. And I am going to call this meeting to order at 2 p.m. This is the Public Safety and Justice Committee meeting of September 3rd, 2020. And I believe Nancy is our clerk today. And I will ask her to take a roll.
Vice Chairperson Wasserman.
Here.
Chairperson Ellenberg.
I am here. Thanks, Jill. Sorry, I thought it was Nancy.
Maurice, you have the forum.
Okay. Thank you very much. And with that, let's get right to public comment. Do we have any speakers?
It looks like we have one speaker.
All right, then that one speaker should have 3 minutes, please.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Scott Largent. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 3 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Good afternoon, everyone. Scott Largent. Running a little behind today. I just got off work, made my way over to the county building in the getaway van. So my, how do I say this the right way? I got to think for a second. I've never really been at much of a loss for words. I talk too much. I go to too many of these meetings and I ask too many people for help that won't provide it. Last Friday, I was downtown and I was in my van utilizing the Wi-Fi on 3rd Street and the protesting started up again. I was able to get out of the getaway van. I had my camera, started filming everything. Didn't recognize a single person. No faith leaders, no community leaders, you know, Derek Sanderlin, Robert Aguirre, nobody. Okay, Sean Cartwright, there wasn't a single person there. There were people with shields, weapons, umbrellas, tactical gear, helmets, you know, bear mace. I mean, this, you know, and these people had several vehicles that were their own medical vehicles that they kind of put together. I didn't like seeing that. It was just kind of weird, and it didn't come across as civil and peaceful. People were getting terrified on the other side of the street. Cars started kind of moving. It just looked like something was going to happen where somebody was going to get run over. As this made its way to San Pedro Square, it started getting very intense. Families that had basically just gotten out of quarantine that were sitting down with their children were just paraded, harassed. It was pretty wild. And I do support people's First Amendment rights, just not when it really gets like this. So at the point after the San Pedro Square disruption, these rioters, or basically they're Antifa also, ended up trashing our courthouses down 1st Street, a lot of graffiti, made it around the corner down near Bassett, started threatening a woman and her child on a balcony, started telling people they're going to burn their places down. If you're not with us, you're against us. Get to the front of the line. You know, get out of here if you're not willing to fight. That's when things took a big turn. When I put my camera down to switch to the GoPro, that's when I was attacked. Fortunately enough, I was able to defend myself until the mob turned on me. This mob made its way to Sam Liccardo's house. And of course, all of you know that. You know, that's his castle, that's his home. I might not get along with the mayor, but, you know, they need to stay out of his front yard. And I consider that arson, vandalism, okay? District Attorney Jeff Rosen, I hope you prosecute these people. I hope it doesn't have to be the state attorney or the feds to get involved to do this. It's the right thing to do, and we need to keep these people out of our community. It's not safe. Thank you.
That concludes our speakers.
Thank you so much. With that, we'll move on to item number 3, agenda item 3, which is approval of the consent calendar. Supervisor Wasserman, I would like to add item 9, the PSJC annual extra help usage report for fiscal year 2020 to the consent calendar, if that is agreeable to you.
If that's your motion, I'll second it.
Excellent. Then we have a consent calendar with items 11 and 9 approved. Do we have speakers on the consent calendar?
We do have one speaker.
Okay, so this is a 2-minute comment period, please.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Scott Largent. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Thank you, everyone. Scott Largent. This item kind of came up, kind of opened my eyes up here for a second. Items that require extra help. I kind of get that we're tight on time here and that we have to keep these meetings shorter. I mean, I know you guys have a lot of stuff to do. I got to go back to work also. Let's not get in a habit of starting to bury things like this. We need to have an ability to discuss things, and it's very important. Let's not do what the anti-democratic city of San Jose does and start burying everything on the consent calendar. I do appreciate your leadership, Susan Ellenberg. You are asking questions. You are saying things that I am impressed with. The community is impressed with. And I'm seeing life out of a committee that, honest to God, was like beating a dead horse for 4 years. We have problems here. We have problems with elected officials. We have people that are making up happy stories, people that are that just don't take responsibility. Half of the panel there for the Justice and Public Safety Committee more likely is going to end up with handcuffs on. This is every day you see something new. And don't you people know how to take responsibility? When you do something wrong, fess up, quit making up excuses. You know, it's as bad as Nancy Pelosi going and getting her hair done. And she didn't even want to take responsibility. She says, I'm taking responsibility for a setup. And it's like, come on. You know, my hair looks like a mop right now, and I haven't been able to go get a haircut. And same with everybody else that I know. I just don't get it. Time to take responsibility. It's time to stop infighting up there and start taking care of the public. I'm very frustrated. I'm not going to back down. And you know, you guys need to start going after the right people and start embracing the good ones. I don't understand it. Start speaking up.
That concludes our speakers, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And we will then move on to item number 4, which is to, yes.
May I ask a question? I don't know, since there's only 2 of us, if it sufficed, you made the motion, I seconded, or if we needed a roll call vote.
Thank you. Let's find out.
Yes, we do need a roll call vote, Madam Chair.
Thank you for catching that. Go ahead.
Vice Chairperson Wasserman?
Yes.
And Chairperson Ellenberg?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move on to item 4, to receive verbal reports from the departments on their response to COVID-19. And I see, Martha, you have turned on your screen, so I'm guessing it's you. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Yes, we're going to go ahead with our verbal reports by starting with Superior Court. I think I see Judge Ryan on.
Yes, I am on. Thank you. Just a couple things to follow up on what I reported on last month. As many of you, I'm sure, already know, the bench did approve an extension of the zero bail ordinance. Of course, with the judge always retaining jurisdiction in any particular case to do what they think is appropriate under all of the circumstances. That extension is until January 31st, 2021, or until further order of the court. So that's going to give us some time to know about the fate of SB 10 and where we are after that. By mid-September, we will have about 60 departments in the court running, although not all of them are running at full speed. We will be opening up the 4 felony case manager departments, and our Morgan Hill and Palo Alto cases will be heard more fully in some more cases added to those calendars, but they will be heard up in the Hall of Justice because we cannot open Morgan Hill or Palo Alto. But this is going to help us keep getting cases moving, getting cases resolved, getting people that need to be sentenced and out of custody. So it'll have, I think, many beneficial effects. We may need to delay the opening of our traffic court due to budget and staffing concerns, and that may take us through the end of the year. And one other concern that I have heard on a number of occasions is limiting the number of people that we have allow into the courthouse, and we are certainly trying to do that. The ordinance or the order that I issued does require for you to enter that you have a valid reason to be there. So you're going to a court appearance, you're going to the clerk's office, or you have the permission to be there to attend a court proceeding. And of course, if you're a media and you have a media request in, then that would be fine too. So we are trying to do that. We do get assistance from the Sheriff's Department, but it is sort of a daunting task, and we just continue to do the best that we can. Thanks.
Thank you. With that, we'll move on to District Attorney Rosen, please.
Nothing to report.
With that, we'll move on to the Office of the Sheriff. Sheriff Smith.
Good afternoon. As we've reported at several committees in the past, we are doing a lot as it pertains to COVID, both for our employees, for inmates, and for everyone that continues to work. I have Lieutenant Michelle Asbin here who can provide an update on our COVID response. Lieutenant.
Thank you, Sheriff. Good afternoon. When it comes to this pandemic, it has become more and more apparent that no one is immune to the devastating effects caused by the virus, whether it be directly through illness or indirectly through economic downfall. We have seen firsthand the effects of this deadly disease has had on the lives of our own employees. A catastrophic example of this occurred with the infection and hospitalization of one of our own employees whose entire family was stricken by the virus. This included the employee's mother, who ultimately passed away. Tragically, our employee was combating the virus in isolation and was therefore unable to be with her in her final moments. We have seen and heard the many independent and sometimes dissenting views regarding the serious nature of this virus. However, it is instances such as the one I just mentioned that have encouraged our vigilance and caused us to continue to stress the importance of adhering to CDC protocols and the medical community. Our agency has taken a proactive approach in combating the spread of the virus. We were the first entity within the county to create a COVID investigatory unit, a unit that has proven to be instrumental in combating the spread of the virus. Our leadership recognized early on the importance of contact tracing and have continued to develop and refine its processes. The use of data collected from video tracing efforts, combined with the creation of reports containing vital data and statistics, have allowed us to stay on top of this deadly disease and fight it. In recent weeks, the Sheriff's Office has been exploring the use of technology to aid in the battle against this pandemic. We are working with our jail management system vendor to replace our homegrown contact tracing database. This new application will allow our agency to make quicker and more precise decisions regarding the health and safety of those under our care, our employees, and the community we serve. Soon, you'll be able to experience the new look and feel of our COVID-19 dashboard. Our agency heard your concerns. Enhancements to our new site increases our transparency and will provide the public an interactive experience with our data. In late July, our office implemented asymptomatic surveillance testing for all of our employees. Our employees are voluntarily tested every 5 weeks. The test dates are segmented and assigned into blocks based on the first initial of the employee's last name. Since we began testing, we have identified one employee that tested positive for the virus. This individual had no symptoms. I point this out to emphasize the importance of this testing based upon how it has prevented further spread of the virus within our ranks and those under our care. We are also conducting asymptomatic surveillance testing of our jail population. This process is similar to that of our employee surveillance testing, where a different segment of the jail population, approximately 50%, is tested weekly on a 5-week cycle. Additionally, we test all incoming inmates and place them under quarantine in separate housing units for a maximum of 14 days, at which point they are deemed safe to enter housing with the current population. We have had multiple inmates in the current population, as well as those newly arriving, test positive through our testing. By detecting these cases early on and quarantining them, we have managed to keep the overall number of infected persons in custody to a minimum. Our testing efforts and reduction in our jail population, combined with our work in contact tracing, have been vital to protecting this vulnerable section of our community. Furthermore, testing has helped prevent transmission among employees and has afforded us the opportunity to share information with allied agencies, helping keep their employees safe as well. Through our efforts, we have prevented and avoided mass infection and have seen an overall downward trend in the number of cases we are identifying and managing on a daily basis. As of today, the total number of COVID-19 positive inmates is 1. Our agency understands our response to this virus must continue to evolve and that we must be willing to adapt as this pandemic presses on. Moving forward, our agency will continue its fervent collaboration with our various partners and ensuring policy and best practices are adhered to while continuing to find new and innovative ways to utilize technology and manpower to slow the transmission of COVID-19. Stopping the spread of the virus will remain our steadfast priority. I would like to give a special thanks to our partners in custody health and county public health, whose work helped make all of what we have accomplished possible.
And we'd be happy to take any questions that you may have. And public health has been a great partner along with custody health. We've done this in tandem and have ongoing conversations with them about what we can do different. And I really want to thank custody health, public health, and also the leadership of county council in shepherding this process also.
Thank you, Supervisor Wasserman. I saw the blue hand and the white hand. You want to do questions after each report or at the end of all?
I just have one quick question about one thing I heard, if that's all right.
Absolutely.
Early on in this report, it was mentioned the testing was done, and I didn't quite catch it if it was every 5 days or every 5 weeks of staff personnel.
Every 5 weeks is mandatory.
Okay. And Sheriff, I don't know if you heard earlier in the week, Dr. Fensterscheib alluded to a new technology that's come out that's got 1-day results and nasal swabbing with the short Q stick, not the long one. And I wondered if that would make sense for doing once a week. I'm catching things as soon as possible. I don't know what costs are involved to the departments. I don't know how costs are shared or how practical or impractical it is with all the people that you have, but testing has changed dramatically in the last 10 days.
Yes, and when we decided that we would make it mandatory for all of our custody staff, we knew that it was a great benefit to the employee to be tested. We have heard of that 1-day test. And again, we work with public health continually to find the very best way. I know that the county's emergency operations center, they test every 2 weeks. If we could get it down, I know that our employees would volunteer. We've made it mandatory, but no one has resisted or said no. You know, they look forward to the testing. We would like to do it more often.
Great. I think that makes sense for public health and public safety. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Moving on to Public Defender O'Neill.
Sorry, technical difficulties. Good afternoon, everybody. So we're gearing up in our office for 7 new courtrooms to open up. And as Judge Ryan alluded to earlier, there's a great deal of concern among the lawyers and paralegals in our office who have been going to court and will be going to court even more now with these 7 new departments opening up, about safety at the courthouse. And while there are public health orders that apply to numbers of people in square footage and that kind of thing, the real problem is a lack of a compliance officer of any kind. So while you may limit the number of people in an elevator to 2, no one's checking to make sure that those limits are being adhered to. And with respect to coming into the courthouse and what business you have there, it's very, it depends on the day whether people are being asked or not asked. So what we'd really like to see is someone named to be a compliance officer, to go around the courthouse, to remind people to put their masks on, to check on the numbers, to make sure that they're not being, that there aren't too many people in the waiting areas, that if there are too many people in the waiting areas, a deputy is called to staff an adjacent courtroom that's empty so that people can adequately socially distance. For our part, we're going to, for the first few weeks that these extra courtrooms open, we're going to set up outside and try and hold people from going in, so that we're going to have calendars of 70 or 80 people, which definitely is not safe. So we will try to hold some of those folks outside until their cases are going to be called and triage some. But that's one thing we can do, but we would really love for the county and the court to have a conversation along with the Department of Correction and Defense Counsel and the prosecution to figure out who can enforce these orders, because it's going to get very unsafe very quickly and we are really worried about it. So I have been in conversation with the Chief Operating Officer, Miguel Marquez, about some of these issues, and I am getting a lot of fear and consternation communicated to me from our staff. So I think it's really important to say this emphatically and say it so that it gets heard. And lastly, I think it's really important for public health to weigh in again. There was a walkthrough done several months back. We know a lot more about the virus now than we did then. We really didn't talk about aerosols or air purification or cleaning or cooling systems. And I think that needs to be part of the conversation so we don't have an outbreak from the courthouse. And with that, I will take any questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Independent Defense Counsel Office, Sylvia.
Good afternoon, everyone. I don't have anything new to add. I would echo Molly's concerns because of the significant number of people that we anticipate converging at the Hall of Justice. And so I echo her concerns, and I hope we can come together to come up with some viable solutions. I'd like to be included in that conversation as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to probation, Chief Garnett.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you. I'll just update on the new things. I won't go through what we've already done. Since the last meeting, we've begun the serial testing for juvenile hall every 5 weeks, similar to the jail. The ranch staff will start next week. On the adult side, we have 83 releases from CDCR as of now. And these are the early releases due to COVID. 5 of those clients coming back were positive for COVID. They were housed through the state, and they're actually doing a really good job with that now. We're happy with that. The adult division is busy preparing for more courtrooms to be open with all the same concerns and plans that you've heard from others. I'm happy to announce that both the Santa Cruz County youth who were evacuated to our facility and the ranch youth are back in their respective places as of today. And then just something that I think is interesting, so I wanted to go ahead and highlight it because it was brought to my attention. I know there's a lot of focus on how long youth have not had visits, which is a concern of all of ours. So somebody let me know today, so it's just a point that I think we should at least keep in mind. Only 13 of the youth currently in custody today were in custody at the time of the shelter-in-place order. We currently have 51 youth in custody. So for whatever that's worth, it was an interesting number for me. Happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you. I want to mention a technical challenge piece just to make sure the clerks are aware. I'm getting reports that there are multiple video feeds or audio feeds happening on top of each other, and a question about whether the public system is down.
And Madam Chair, it's back now.
It is back now?
Uh-huh.
We were aware of some difficulties with the feed.
Terrific. Thank you so much. And apologies.
No,
Chief
thank
Burnett.
you. We appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Rob Coelho from County Counsel's Office. In that regard, Supervisor, I did get an email from someone who was attempting to speak in public comment, but then it broke off. And so at your discretion, at some point later in the meeting, Mr. Hansen indicated that through no fault of his own, the technology prevented him from public comment.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rob. So why don't we finish these department reports through Martha, see if either of us has any, either I or Supervisor Wasserman have any questions, and then we'll go to public comment, and we'll allow Mr. Hansen 3 minutes since this is since that will be his public comment space from the earlier agenda item. Yeah. So Martha.
Thank you. With that, we'll go ahead to Reentry Services, Director Javier Aguirre.
Good afternoon, supervisors. Just 3 quick updates in terms of trends for our visits here at the Reentry Center. We've been seeing an increase in clients at both the San Jose and the Gilroy Center. We've also seen an increase of the usage of the Sobering Center by law enforcement agencies, which is a really good thing in terms of having the Sobering Center used for people that are publicly intoxicated, those that are exhibiting a mental health issue or a substance use issue. We're looking at our 2019-20 numbers, fiscal year 20 numbers, and we're looking, we identified about 3,000 clients, new clients that came to the Reentry Center, about almost 19,600 visits. So we're now looking at, compare that to last year, and of course, those months of shelter in place, the impact that it had to our visitors. Our second update, we're pleased to announce that we have a education program with the Santa Clara County Office of Education. The program started just Friday of last week, and clients have an opportunity to complete their high school diploma, including career technical education credits. So we're very pleased. We are starting with online support, online classes, with the hope of having in-person, and clients that do have difficulty getting online, we will assist them and offer them our computer lab here at the center for those that are unable to access this great opportunity for our clients. And then lastly, as you received an update last week regarding the racial equity, leadership teams were gearing up to begin a cohort of 32 individuals from the Reentry Resource Center that includes staff, community-based organizations, individuals with lived experience, and most importantly, some of from our advisory group. So they'll be participating in trainings with the goal of creating a racial equity action plan to present to this committee and the board later this year. And with that, I'm open for questions.
Thank you. And last but not least is pretrial services, Director Fisk.
Thank you. And I think in the interest of time, if it's okay, I could reserve my comments for when I give my presentation.
That's absolutely fine.
Okay, thank you.
And that concludes the Madam Chair.
Thank you. I just had a question for Chief Garnett, which I lost track of during the trying to sort out the technical issues. But can you tell us about the status of the COVID-19 baseline testing at Juvenile Hall and the Ranch? Did it start this week?
Yes, it did. It started at Juvenile Hall this week, and it starts at the Ranch next week.
And what do you anticipate being the weekly volume?
And you're talking about for the staff, Supervisor? I'm going to turn that over to Deputy Chief Burchard.
Good afternoon, supervisors. Because it's voluntary, we're hoping that staff are very interested in volunteering for this test. Again, like the sheriff's, it's every 5 weeks. I heard what Supervisor Wasserman said, and I would concur. The more often that we could provide that, certainly the better and safer it would be for everybody. I know that Public Health Department is looking into higher level of frequency if possible, but to start, it will be every 5 weeks. So I'm hoping, Supervisor Ellenberg, that we have a large turnout because it just makes sense, but we'll see how that turns out here in the next few weeks. And it'll be every 5 weeks as well.
So thank you. Nick, you said that it's voluntary. Why do we have different policies? Is the sheriff's policy, I believe she said mandatory, is that correct?
So I'm sitting in the same meetings and discussions with public health and custody health with the sheriff's department. And we are posing the question as well, is can it be mandatory? So that's still being worked out.
But I understand that the sheriff has said that it is mandatory for her department. So would there be different rules for different departments?
I'm thinking maybe the sheriff could answer that.
Sounds good. Sheriff, you specifically said that it's mandatory.
Yes, I did say mandatory. I had discussions with the unions on that, and they agreed it would be mandatory. We've had discussions with County Council and Dr. Smith and Labor Relations, and they all know it's mandatory. We just have not had to mandate anyone. No one has said no, so we haven't forced the mandate, but they understand that it would be mandated.
Would be mandated?
No,
it is. Okay. I just want to be clear. It is required, but everyone is stepping up without objection, either because they're happy to do it or because they know that it's mandatory. So they have to do it.
We just have not had to issue a direct order to anyone yet, but it is mandatory.
And Nick, do you expect something different for probation?
Not necessarily expect something different, but I do believe that it's a conversation, as the sheriff mentioned, with the unions and everybody involved before you make that a mandatory decision, at least from our perspective. And we certainly hope to not have to make it mandatory.
Maybe I can jump in here a little bit, Supervisor.
Just a second, Dr. Smith. Supervisor Wasserman has his hand up. I want to get him in and then turn to you.
Chair. I'm getting reports of being able to hear staff in the background talking over the speakers as they speak. So I would encourage anybody who's not speaking to perhaps put their microphones on mute.
My apologies. We are working on that issue. It sounds like there are people in the physical chambers room that were getting picked up on those microphones, and I think we're getting close to having that resolved.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. Go ahead, Dr. Smith.
There are different rules that apply between the deputy sheriffs and probation officers having to do with the fact that the sheriff is an independently elected official and the peace officer authority allows her to impose certain conditions of work that imposed by the probation officer. However, that being said, I don't think there's any objection by the unions, and we'll go through the process. Obviously, Nick knows how to work it with the unions, and I'm sure it'll end up effectively being mandatory.
Great. Thank you very much. Supervisor Wasserman, do you have questions for any of the other departments that made COVID reports? All right, nor do I. So why don't we turn to public comment? And again, Ron Hansen may have 3 minutes, other speakers 2 minutes in terms of our regular policies.
Perfect. We will start with Ron Hansen. Our next speaker is Ron Hansen. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 3 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Good afternoon, supervisors. Thank you for this opportunity to address. My comments have to do with the hunger strike that commenced back in mid-August and was suspended by the strikers 7 to 9 days later. It's my view that when a person stops eating, that is, starts exhibiting a form of self-harm, in any other setting, this would set off alarm bells. Indeed, were this to happen in your or my family, we would do whatever we could to address the underlying issues in an attempt to solve them and restore the health of those we love. In the jail setting, however, refusing to eat is seen as a discipline issue or an act of defiance rather than an act of self-harm or a cry for help. Only when the detainee's blood sugar level dropped to hypoglycemic levels was the jail administration interested in attention to the strikers' concerns. I hope that the sheriff will re-examine detainee issues going forward. A hunger strike is a cry for help and should be regarded as such by the sheriff. Thank you.
Do we have other speakers?
Yes, we do, Madam Chair. Okay. Our next speaker is Scott Largent. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak, and the timer will start when you begin speaking.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Scott Largent. What I was kind of wondering as far as COVID, and I know you guys are probably pretty fed up of listening to me talk. Why are we not helping the mentally ill right now? Why are we not doing that? And why don't we have adequate washing stations and bathrooms for people right now, just for people in our community? I'm at the county building right now. When you walk along the side of the DA's office, all there is urine, feces, vomit. It's a daily thing. It's just constantly cleaned up. A washing station. I've been starting to communicate with companies that provide these type of products because I'm kind of getting sick of waiting around for you people to do anything. Let's see who can get it done faster, okay? Because I can probably pull it off in about a week. I can start getting donations from the community, get some of these companies to sponsor providing this type of equipment. That for some reason you guys don't want to do this. Now, this all is about leadership and who runs our county. Sleepy Smith, Jeff Smith, okay? Why does he not think it's a problem? He's got to walk past all those deuces on the side of the building every single day, and he does not think that's a problem. We don't do enough. You guys know it. You guys see it, and you do nothing. And that's inhumane. I'm surprised it's even happening in America. It's wrong. And I'm handing out water on hot days, and I don't see anybody from the county. Where are you people? You talk a big game in here, but you walk right past people suffering in front of you. That I don't get. And maybe one of these days I'll understand it, but that's when we get new leadership in, because half of you really are going to go away in handcuffs. Thank you.
Our next speaker is identified as Court Watcher. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak, and the timer will start when you begin speaking.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Susan Bassey. And I got calls today about a number of residents who had been denied access to our public meetings because of the technology that the county has implemented, which I believe to be a Brown Act violation. I called and I made complaints. I asked that those complaints be kicked up to County Counsel, Susan Ellenberg. I emailed you. I emailed Jeff Rosen. Apparently, Mr. Rosen has decided that the county resources should be used exclusively for his political prosecutions and not for people to participate in their government. This is the chilling of dissent. It is the silencing of speech. It is an absolute annihilation of the First Amendment. The county has required access to the internet and Zoom for people to be able to participate in these meetings without being exposed to COVID. The county has given Scott Largent an exclusive monologue on what he believes is needing to be done in the county. You are not paying attention to the serious public health and safety issues in this county. I have documented it. I have sent it. You have repeated Brown Act violations, and we are not discussing what is going on with our San Jose Police Department, with our district attorney who has been gunning for Sheriff Smith with a number of county council over CCW permits, when we have serious issues of public corruption arising from the DA's office, including the mishandling of federal grant money and human trafficking, which is now being investigated by the federal government. And adding Brown Act violations to chill speech and silence what is going on, especially in relation to our family courts, is absolutely unacceptable. Our libraries are closed. The public does not have access to the internet if they are socioeconomically disadvantaged, and these issues must be addressed by the county. Otherwise, you are not governing as our democracy intends. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Peggy Bryan. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak, and the timer will start when you begin speaking.
Good afternoon, Peggy Bryan, Pastoral Associate at St. Andrew's Episcopal Church, Saratoga. We have a thriving, that's a bad word to use, but a ministry in Elmwood. I keep hearing from the men in some of the dorms. It seems like things are calming down in there, but I did get a call today from a gentleman who is in a dorm, and it's been repopulated just now. He says there's 65 of them, which they all thought there would be a lot less. He said at least 2 people in the dorm are exhibiting symptoms. And there's rumors that 2 or 3 others just came straight out of the COVID area without being retested. So I just wanted to put it out there that I think I spoke perhaps here last time or another meeting, that the more transparency and the more listening back and forth between the guards and the detainees, I think would help a lot to calm some of the rumors that go on and get them all worked up and frightened. His last word to me is, we're just all waiting to get COVID. So I know there's a lot of good things going on, but there's still a big fear factor. And I am surprised that any dorm has 65 guys in it. So with that, I just say thank you for listening, and I appreciate all the work you're doing.
Our next speaker is Barbara Hansen. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak, and the timer will start when you begin speaking.
Hello, this is Barbara Hansen. At the Tuesday Board of Supervisors meeting, a question was asked by supervisors submitting if the culture of the jail has changed. Though there have been changes, I would say the following testifies to the culture needing to reflect more change. Recently, a hunger strike occurred at the jail in our county. Some fasted for 9 days. There was a list of demands which I can send you, but more importantly, I would like to tell you why our pretrial detainees go to the extreme of hunger striking. They ask that detainees be able to withdraw more than $100 from their account twice in their entire stay. Some have been there for 7 years. It was asked that this be changed as the need to withdraw money came up more times than that rule. The detainees did the following to get this request heard. Filed a grievance about the limits, increased, denied. Appealed it, denied. Brought it up to the Inmate Advisory Council, denied. Filed a habeas in court, denied. Filed an appeal with 6th District, denied. Starved for 9 days, action. This does not reflect to the public a culture change in the jails. Thank you for your attention.
That concludes our speakers, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Do we need a motion to approve the receipt of reports on item 4?
No.
Nope. All right. Then with that, we will move on to item 5, which is to receive reports from the probation department related to juvenile justice annual report.
Great, thank you. So let me introduce Dr. Child, who you guys have met before, and she will be presenting on the annual report. We're super excited and really thankful for our partners for participating in this and looking forward to having the discussion. So Dr. Child, take it away.
Great, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for giving us this time. I know there are a lot of things going on, but I really appreciate you giving us the time to share this collaborative report with all of you. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And just get a thumbs up. Can everyone see that? Great, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. See if I can minimize that. Great, so as you know, the 2019 annual report is collaborative through many partners. And if you'll see here, that gives you an idea of some of the people who are participating in this collaborative, in this work group. And I'll say that although probation is the one who's reporting, this isn't a probation report. This really is truly a collaborative between all of the stakeholders in the juvenile justice system. And so it's been a wonderful exercise in talking about data, talking about services, talking about how we do better at our jobs, and really hearing voice from the community about needs. And so I also wanted to say that this is the 4th year that the research unit in the probation department has coordinated this report. And I'd just like to give a special thanks to 2 of the specialists in our unit who really made this happen. This report was led by Marina Cruz, who every year handles multiple stakeholders, multiple different types of data and narrative. And so just to give her some thanks, and Brittany Carnahan, who does so many hours of cleaning and reporting and writing this report. So I just wanted to thank them, even though I'm the one who's presenting. There's a lot of work behind the scenes in order to make this happen. This slide is giving you an overview of some of the trends at the key decision points in the system. And so in 2019, you'll see that we had a decrease almost back to the 2016 numbers. So that's definitely a trend that we would like to see, is to see those numbers continue to decrease. I won't go through all the points at the bottom out of time consideration today, because we're going to talk about those on the next few slides. This is the counts, duplicated arrests and citations by youth from 2015 to 2019. And what you'll see are those blue bars. Those are the duplicated counts of arrests and citations. The orange line is the unduplicated count of youth. So in 2019, one of the things that we saw is, although we had a decrease in the number of arrests and citations, we had a very small increase in the number of youth. So one of the things, if any of you have had a chance to see the serious offense report that we put out last year, is that there were a small number of youth who were committing more offenses than average, and we did not see that same trend necessarily this year. Looking a little bit deeper into arrests and citations, you'll see that 28% of all the arrests and citations were for property crimes. Felony crimes against people were 17% of the arrests and citations. Again, remember, these are duplicated counts as well. One of the things that we want to highlight that we do every year is we talk about the disparities in arrest. And I'd like you to consider this information when we get to the end of the presentation. We're going to talk about this a little bit more in depth. But one of the things that we try to highlight every year to really put an emphasis on is we still see that Black and Latino youth are overrepresented in the system, and the arrest and citation point is still one of those areas. Looking into the types of arrests and citations, we are seeing a number of misdemeanors. So we see 44% of all the arrests and citations were for misdemeanors, and 39% were for felonies. This is a decrease in felonies from 2018, and again, a very positive thing that we see from 2018 to 2019. We also wanted to look at geography. So one of the things I'd like to preface the slide is that we look at geography not because we're looking for what you might see in some of the policing research, which talks about hotspots. We look at geography and probation from a community support perspective. And so where do a majority of these youth live, and are we getting youth voice, family voice? Are we providing the right services and supports in those communities? So when we take a breakdown and we look at those arrests and citations, what we see for the zip codes, those youth who are committing the most felony offenses are from 95122 and 95116. What we do see is kind of a little bit of a different trend in South County, and we see more misdemeanors coming from South County. And we're going to talk a little bit about more of that on another slide later on in the presentation. This slide, sorry. It's hard to present and not see everyone's faces, so we'll move forward. So arrests and citations by South County, this gives you some trends over time from 2015 to 2019. And what you'll see in this case is we are seeing an increase in arrests and citations from some of the zip codes. I will say that probation has already had some preliminary discussions, both with our educational partners and our law enforcement partners and community partners. And so we've really talked about the complexities and why this might look this way. And there's no one particular answer, but it's definitely some discussions that have been warranted and we've been having. Most importantly, even though we're presenting numbers, these numbers represent real kids with real struggles and needs that they're facing. And so one of the things that we do in probation is we use a needs tool. It's a needs assessment. And through a conversation the probation officer has with the youth individually, we really talk with them about what are those things that are facing the youth and their family. This slide is a very brief summary of what you'll see in the overall report. And it really speaks to the challenges that these kids are facing in our communities. So let me give you some examples. When we talk about home life, we see that there are girls are reporting a lot more family history problems than boys. We're still continuing to see a large percentage of kids in the juvenile justice system with child welfare involvement. We also see in this case that girls are more likely to self-report abuse and neglect and trauma compared to boys. Now, when we talk about self-report, we do realize that self-report could potentially be undercounting. What we do is we do track these numbers over time so that they are indicators if we're seeing increases or decreases. And we understand that oftentimes what is reported, especially when we talk about boys and abuse, is probably actually undercounting the issues. For those, when we talk about education, we see that both boys and girls need assistance and support in order to be successful in school. We also see a lot of school engagement issues. We see some issues due to achievement problems. Education is still a big need area for a lot of our youth on probation. And what we do see is we see that most of the boys and the girls we have on probation also have youth who they are friendly with or hanging out with who also have legal troubles, perhaps are gang affiliated. So really missing kind of those pro-social connections that are so valuable for young people during these ages. And finally, talking about behavioral health, this is an area that we do continue to see a lot of struggles with kids in the juvenile justice system, significant issues with depression, anxiety, and other emotional factors. Behavioral health continues to be a great partner with us and really working on finding the best fit services for youth in the system. So let's move on and talk about these kids and some of these journey points through. And so this slide is talking to us about the number of kids who are referred and then admitted to juvenile hall. So the very first table that you see where it says referred to juvenile hall, those are kids who have been brought to the juvenile hall. Again, the orange line is only indicated of the unduplicated count. You'll see that we had 100 less youth who were brought to the hall in 2019 than 2018, which is a positive sign. In 2019, we also saw a decrease in the number of youth who were also admitted to juvenile hall. Not detained, just admitted. When we look at those detention decisions, what we see is we see in 2019 that 91% of all the youth who were brought to the hall were detained. That's a 1% increase from 2018. Our hope is for the juvenile hall is that kids who meet the criteria, whether it has to do with their particular offense or other kind of mandate, are brought to the hall. And what we do see is a majority of the kids who are detained in the hall fall into those categories. Taking a deeper look at juvenile hall detentions, we see the most frequent reasons for admissions are felony crimes against people. Property crimes are the two top categories. Again, though, however, we're still seeing a disparity in the youth who are detained at the hall. We see Black and Latino youth are 10 and 5 times more likely than white youth to be detained at this particular decision point. Moving on to petitions, in 2018, there were 848 petitions filed. The most frequent reasons a petition was filed had to do with robbery, residential burglary, or auto theft. Again, looking at disparity, we still see there is a significant disparity between Black and Latino youth, who were 13 and 6 times more likely to be petitioned than white youth. So I told you at the beginning of the presentation that we were going to put together some of our disparity numbers. We haven't shown it in this format before, but it's been a very important part of the probation discussion with a lot of our community partners. And one of the reasons why we really wanted to put this slide together is that although we do see a slight decrease in 2019, what we still do see is we still see some pretty significant disparities between those decision points and Black and Latino youth compared to white youth in the system. And so although the county has been very forward thinking and really trying to be a better ally and work on hearing community voice and needs, there's still so much work left to be done. And so we just kind of want to leave you with that as an area that throughout all of us as public servants and as community providers that we still need to work on together. And so are there any questions? Supervisor
Wasserman.
Thank you, Chair. And Dr. Child, first I'll embarrass my Chief of Staff, Christine, who calls you a rock star. Oh. And I agree, and I kudos to you for giving credit to your staff as each and every department head and person that I seem to interact does. You're all very humble in that respect, and we all have great staff that makes us look good.
We do.
I had one question for you, and I'm sorry if you have page numbers. I could not see a page number on your PowerPoints, but it's packet page 28. It's entitled Arrests and Citations, Geography.
Sure.
And what my question was, I was looking at the bar charts with the felony count in the top bars and the misdemeanor counts in the bars below that. And one thing, when I look at that, Dr. Child, and I see the circle around San Jose, the circle around Gilroy, what's always important to me is what the per capita rate is. Because sometimes people talk about a district in San Jose and they talk about the city of Gilroy. Well, a district in San Jose has 100,000 people. The city of Gilroy has more than 50,000. And so in these where it shows felony counts and it shows Gilroy as 4th with 73 in the 95020 zip code, I wondered per capita where that is. I didn't know how many people were in each of these zip codes.
No, I think that's a fantastic question. We in particular don't look at it that way because we think of it as numbers of kids who need services. So we haven't examined it that way because we do really look at it from a support standpoint. And rather than, we don't compare the zip codes with regards, we don't look at them as crime rates. We look at them as support, how many youth in those areas need support. But that's an excellent question and definitely worth thinking about including perhaps next year.
Thank you, appreciate it. That's it, Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Holly, thank you for this report. It's thorough and it's informative and it's really troubling. The disproportionality that you point out is stark. The numbers should be utterly unacceptable to any of us, and I know that this department and I know that Chief Garnett takes this very seriously and is working to address these issues through race equity and justice systems and the race equity through prevention work groups. What scares me is that if we say we have all of this awareness, but there is still much more work to do, literally, what is the work? What are we going to do that will change these outcomes? What does that look like when we say we have so much more to do?
Can I jump in real quick? I think one area that we're doing differently than we have been is we're part of GARE, and Deputy Chief Mike Sims, who I believe is on here, is the executive sponsor for probation. And so that's an area we're focusing on. That's a change, that's a difference. I think the community as a whole is mobilized differently than they've ever been. I think COVID has created different ways of communication and mobilization. And I'm expecting that we're going to get a lot more traction on just looking at inequities and get a little bit beyond the "don't call me a racist" discussion. So I actually feel very positive about this in our community, and I think people are going to roll up their sleeves and we're going to make a difference. I think we're going to see different numbers next year. I really believe that.
I think we have to, if we want, credibility for the progressive attitude that we claim to have, and I'm including myself here. I am not singling out any for doing something intentionally or consciously wrong, but it just shows how much more intentional we have to be. And what I would like to see is, beyond the very good faith efforts to do better, to see the departments track goals. I mean, Holly had very specific numbers today: 10 times more likely, 16 more times more likely, 5 times more likely. Does it make sense to have realistic, smart goals that we can work toward? I mean, of course, it should be 0, but if it's going to take us some iterations to get there, can we cut it in half? Can we cut it by 80% next year? What is realistic, and how much real urgency is there in changing what we're doing?
So, Supervisor Ellenberg, if I could jump in as well. Hello. I think that we would have to get back to you on what would be some realistic goals. I think that our department has goals every year for releases from detention and ensuring that youth are getting access to the services and are released as quickly as possible, COVID aside. I would say that a lot of this work is not dependent on the probation department, but also dependent on honestly, the people who bring the kids to our front door, which is the police department. And we have been having a greater relationship with the police departments and more conversations. They've been participating in our race equity and justice systems. We haven't been meeting lately because of COVID, but prior to that, they had been attending regularly and participating for the previous 6 months. And so I think that our work with them is really important, and we continue to be a part of the South County Youth Task Force and other sort of prevention-oriented groups that are doing this work, because probation doesn't control that front door. We can only control what happens once the kids get to us, and we are doing our best to do that. But honestly, though that work is also has to happen in communities and also with the police agencies.
I agree 100%, Mary Ellen. Thank you so much for calling that out, that of course it's not your determination who comes in the doors, but that to me again is another opportunity to talk at a county-wide level. And I'm sure, I know we're going to hear from Charmaine. What do we need to be doing in our neighborhoods? What investments do we need to be making? What supports there, so that kids are not being brought at all, or in significant numbers, and certainly not in disproportionate numbers, into our juvenile justice system or facilities. So thank you for that. Chief Garnett, I had a couple of other questions about the ledge file, but not pertaining to Holly's report. Are there more reports coming, or shall I ask all of my questions now?
You should ask your questions now. Can I make one comment though?
Of course.
One other change, just because I just get excited. I just want people to know. Another change that's a palatable change is San Jose PD has dedicated high-level staff after, they've had staffing crunches, and our meetings take a lot of time and energy, and because they really dedicated to focus on race and equity, they have dedicated people to work on this now, and regular people. And that sounds like it's not a big deal, but it is a big deal. It's a really big deal. And the police chiefs also have their representative who's very, very involved. So I just want to put that, I just want that out there, because anything that's going to make a difference, we should be, highlighting and sunshining. And yes,
thank you so much.
Any questions you have?
I appreciate that. I'll go through the rest, turn to Supervisor Wasserman, and then to public comment. In the section of the report regarding criminogenic needs, the report highlights prostitution as a crime that might be committed for material reasons. But when we're discussing juveniles, is labeling that behavior as prostitution still an appropriate, if it was ever, is it an appropriate classification?
Yeah, we don't actually use that word. Unfortunately,
Okay.
That is a terminology that's in the tool. And that's just an oversight in our behalf that we didn't catch that. We never use that terminology in-house. It is a tool that was created during a time, so it's a standardized tool, and we just didn't catch that terminology. So we need to correct that. Thank you for letting us know.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad to hear that. And Chief Garnett, can you provide us with a quick status update on the DJJ realignment?
Wow. Yes, I can. We had a call with the governor's office this morning, a very lengthy call. So basically, kind of in a nutshell, DJJ will cease taking any, so the Division of Juvenile Justice, which is the equivalent of a state prison for juveniles, will quit taking any new admits July 1 of 2021. There is a clause that if your youth stay longer than that, then it's $125,000 per year. But I think we should all be realistic and understand that as something is shutting down, staff will be leaving, conditions of confinement likely will deteriorate. And I don't think we will be leaving youth there past that date, nor would we be planning that. So that is completely realigned as of 2021. There's also a lot of other sweeping changes in that piece of legislation that I'm not ready to speak to. But this is a profound change for our county. We have 33 youth there today. And we have already completely mobilized. We're starting to have meetings. I didn't endorse this legislation. I wish it had not passed this way. I'll just say that publicly. Having said that, it did. So we're going to make the best of it, knowing that the governor will sign it. And now we're looking at it as an opportunity. I spent a chunk of time talking with the presiding judge, Lucero, last night. She's super excited, and we're going to move forward and make, the best alternative that we can.
Really appreciate your statewide leadership and advocacy on this. Your passion is very contagious, and I also regret that this passed, but I know that your voice carries influence and certainly is a contributing factor to the governor's being willing to sit down now and try to hammer out details that will be better or more tenable for counties. So I just wanted to thank you on that. And then the last piece that I want to note from your report, and I'm surprised that Supervisor Wasserman didn't hit it first, because we are both dog lovers. And I was excited to see the dog training program that's proven successful at Juvenile Hall is going to be expanded to youth at the ranch. The report mentions that the department is also considering allowing dogs to live on site with the youth, which I also think is awesome. And I'm just curious, are the programs being done in partnership with the county's animal shelter?
Is Nick still on here? It's called Unchained, and I know they're connected to the nonprofit is called Unchained. It's the coolest thing ever. It's what I want to do when I retire, because volunteers just take the puppies and they bring them here and they hang out, then they take them back. It's really cool. Nick,
I think they utilize many shelters, including local Santa Clara County as well.
And will dogs be able to live there, or are these come and go dogs?
It'll start as come and go with the ultimate goal to have a dog, certainly one, maybe two dogs live there, certainly.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. Those are the questions that I have. I think we do have more reports on this item before I go to public comment. Is that correct, Martha? Oh, Sylvia, go ahead, please.
I just wanted to say that I understand the challenges that we currently are facing with respect to addressing the disparity in our youth. And I know that is an ongoing challenge. It's not unique to our county. It's nationwide, especially if there is a continuing decrease in the number of youth detained. It is not unusual to see that disparity, and I recognize the immense challenge that our probation department has. But I also wanted to say that if there's one department that I would have a lot of faith in achieving these outcomes, it's our department. Because, you know, with Laura's leadership, with the incredible data collection that Dr. Child has, with Mariel Caballero and all of the leadership team that Laura has put together, I think we're quite capable of achieving that. And I just wanted to say that because I understand the immense work that lies ahead for us all, but I also support your call, Madam President, for requesting that we set some attainable task or attainable goal and objective, because without it, I think we are going to continue to just plow ahead to recognize the challenge, but not have a measurable outcome to sort of identify our progress, which I think is an important opportunity for us to do now. So I just wanted to say that and to thank Dr. Child again for a great report.
I think that's a really good point. I appreciate the emphasis on metrics, and actually that sort of triggered me to turn to the district attorney to ask about a couple of changes that you have proposed also with regard to juveniles, and see how we measure and fit those pieces in. Is Jeff here? I see a square. There you are. Hi. Last year when this report was presented, there was some discussion about how youth were being charged for possession of a weapon. And at that time, youth were being charged with possessing a weapon, even if it wasn't physically on their bodies. For example, a gun in the car with 4 minors led to all 4 being charged with gun possession. I believe you indicated that this would be something your office would explore. And have those practices been reviewed or changed?
I'm not aware of specific cases from the last year where, one gun in a car full of juveniles led to all of them being charged with possession of the gun. I'm not aware of any case like that. So
it was, I believe it was an example that you gave of how weapon possession was charged. But if it was a hypothetical example, if that situation were to arise today, would multiple youth run the risk of being charged with possession of a weapon if they are together, but only one is holding a weapon or the weapon is in the car?
Each case, I don't know what I meant in terms of what I said more than a year ago. I don't remember that comment, but it's hard to answer hypotheticals. I mean, every case is a little bit different. And if there's juvenile is difficult to talk about because juvenile is confidential, unlike adult court. But nobody's brought to my attention, either from public defender, IDO, ADO, community groups. No one said, hey, here's a situation where you charged 4 kids with possession of a gun when there was 1 gun in the car. I guess what I would say about guns and juveniles is, given what we know about brain development and how particularly, men don't have the full sense of their mental maturity till they're in their early 20s, the combination of young juvenile men and guns is incredibly dangerous. Because in part, they don't necessarily fully appreciate the consequences and the dangers of having a weapon. So I think I don't know what I said last year hypothetically. I think my point is,
Juveniles and guns is a very dangerous mix, and we have to be really careful and focused to prevent that from happening and to keep kids from getting their hands on guns.
Thanks. In your the Bend the Arc presentation that you made several weeks ago, I found to be very powerful, and I'm curious to know how you envision those, how any of those principles will impact justice-involved youth. And as an example here, the report that we're looking at today highlights 104 petitions for resisting arrest. Do you expect your new policies to charge those differently, to not charge for resisting going forward?
Well, I think specifically, since we're talking about resisting arrest, what I'd said is that we're absent extraordinary circumstances, we're not going to file standalone 148 charges. So the petitions that you're talking about here, I don't believe that the only charge was resisting arrest. So if somebody commits a crime, a burglary, an auto theft, and they're fleeing from the crime, and there's other crimes that are charged, then resisting arrest may be appropriate given the circumstances. It's the standalone 148 that we're not going to be doing anymore unless there's some extraordinary reason, and that would apply to juveniles as well. So if there are, I don't expect to see very many or any standalone 148.
But you still anticipate it as an add-on?
Yes.
To another arrest?
Yes, 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 as it would be for any, as it would be for an adult or a juvenile.
Thank you. The last question that I want to direct is to Judge Ryan. I was excited to hear about the new care court that began in January of this year. Is there any update on how that has gone so far?
I think it has been going very well. We've always had a truancy court, but I too like the name care court better. We have a great judge, Judge Mike Clark, who's in charge of it. He's very enthusiastic, and he, along with Judge Yu, are our collaborative court judges, and I can expect that it will be a great success, and I will be happy to get some additional information on that and pass it on to you, or ask him to pass on some words about that.
That would be great. Maybe they could share that update at the next PSJC, or I don't want to mandate it for a particular date. I know everyone is very busy, but in the next couple of months would be terrific.
And I bet they'd be happy to do that because they're very proud of it, and I think it's a great community resource and asset.
Fantastic. Thanks, Judge Ryan.
Sure.
Supervisor Wasserman?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, let's go to public comment on this item.
Our next speaker is Scott Largent. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Scott Largent. What I'm kind of surprised about, and I did start to review the report here, a lot of the youth right now that are kind of following the leader as far as First Amendment rights and protesting in our community, what I'm wondering that didn't happen at this meeting is that nobody condemned the violence that happened last Friday here in the city of San Jose when our mayor received death threats, same with everybody in the community. Now, a lot of the group that is starting to follow the Antifa, some of these other hate groups that were out there, the youth of our community, they have been cooped up for a good amount of time. And these kids are playing, like I said, follow the leader. And why are we not out there doing some type of public service announcements, getting out there to the media and warning children not to be getting involved in this type of stuff? In the beginning, it was a civil and peaceful gig. It's not now. And I explained what was going on, and I'm just shocked that nobody had anything to say about that. I don't like Sam Liccardo. I'll just be straight up about it. But that's business. And as far as his personal life, you need to stay away from his home. They committed arson in his front yard. They vandalized his home, and they made death threats to all of his neighbors. Now, this is not getting off topic. I just hope that our DA prosecutes these people. And I hope that the head of our probation department listens to my cries right here and tries to do something to warn children not to get involved with this type of stuff. Kid can make a mistake, decides to make his own Molotov cocktail, and his life's over. And someone else's life could be over. This is very sad, and they're going too far. You don't start threatening people. You don't light fires in front yards. Thank you.
That concludes our speakers.
Thank you very much. If we don't need a motion to approve item 5, we can move on to item 6, which is to receive a report related to psychotropic medication use among foster care youth.
Good afternoon, Supervisor Ellenberg, Supervisor Wasserman. Thank you for letting me present. So this is the report that provides the current utilization and information for psychotropic medication that are currently used among the foster youth. The Department of Family and Children Services is required to obtain court approval using the JV220 applications for all psychotropic medication prescribed to youth in out-of-home placement. Additionally, the JV220 application process must be renewed every 6 months. And for the period from July 2019 to July 2020, there were 212 approved JV220s and a total of 195 unduplicated cases monitored by the 2 public health nurses. As you can see on table, for the tables 1 and 2, they provide the summary for the youth from both the Department of Family and Children Services and the Juvenile Probation Department. Table 2, Figure 1 provides the summary of the medications that are authorized and the medications that are taken by the youth. Of note, one youth has the authorization of 7 medications, but has been consistently taking only 2 medications. And 26 youth of a total of 156 youth, that is about 17% of the youth were not taking any authorized medications. And 53 of the youth, that's about 34% of the youth were taking 1 medication. 41 youth, and that's about 28%, were taking 2 medications. And 24 youth, that's about 15%, were taking 3 medications. The public health nurses perform case monitoring to ensure the youth are being seen regularly by the prescribing physician. And at this time, that more likely be virtually due to the shelter-in-place order. The public health nurses also monitor the potential side effects of the psychotropic medications. And the public health nurses collaborate with the social workers, the behavioral health team, to ensure appropriate therapeutic services. With the shelter-in-place order, the public health nurses are being deployed for COVID-19 pandemic response. And the public health nurses work at the 30% capacity for psychotropic medication duties. Currently, the priorities are to document the authorized JV220s and provide assistance in addressing the issues that are reported by the social workers, the juvenile probation officers, the resource families, and the interagency partners. So thank you, Supervisor Ellenberg, and thank you, Supervisor Wasserman, for your continuous support.
Thank you, Magdalene. Supervisor Wasserman, do you have questions?
No, I'll just say thank you for the report.
I have just a couple. For 2 years now, our county has struggled to create a database that tracks accurately the number and types of medications being taken by youth under our supervision. And I recognize that the way medications are prescribed creates complexities that are difficult to overcome, and that the state has put a hold on a project that would have standardized data tracking and performance measures for psychotropic medications and monitoring. But all of that being said, what can we do locally with the resources we have in our county to actually finally address this issue?
So currently we are manually tracking basically by each monitoring phone call, and we track them manually using an Excel spreadsheet. So if we are able to have a standard tool to track the data, I think that would be wonderful. And if we're able to have, for example, an analyst who able to help us with developing a standardized tracking tool, I think that would be a great need for us.
Does a standardized tracking tool exist that other counties are using that we don't have, or is this not happening anywhere?
It's not happening. It's all manually done by each county at this point.
So you also mentioned the analyst piece. I'm concerned with the update that currently there's just one full-time PHN and a half-code PHN tracking medications, but they've both been pulled into the COVID response. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So who's monitoring the meds?
The nurses are, but then it's when they are able to work on their duties, they would start calling, and we focus on the priorities with the children that are at a higher risk.
Yeah, I would like to think that every child who's been prescribed psychotropic medication is at high risk. So right now there is just one remaining PHN managing the whole caseload.
Yes. The half-code PHN has been deployed full-time for COVID-19 response.
And Dr. Smith, do you see this being sustainable for much longer? We know that this has been a significant and occasionally life-threatening issue for kids.
Right. We're, as I mentioned Tuesday, in the process of reassessing our use of disaster service workers, and I think that the other people will be coming back to continue with the effort. The manual monitoring is a real struggle, and as was mentioned, basically every county in the state is relegated to a manual process because, as you mentioned, the state process was given up on, but we realize it's a high priority and we'll restructure appropriately.
I appreciate that. So I'd like to get an update at the next PSJC meeting on whether that situation has changed. And certainly as we talk about county system efficiencies, I know that there are so many on your list, Dr. Smith. It probably fills multiple notebooks, but certainly creating our own tools would increase that efficiency many-fold and would allow us to deploy our precious FTEs in different ways as well. So I'll look forward to getting a follow-up report on that at the next Public Safety and Justice meeting. Do we have any public comments on this item?
We do not, Madam Chair.
Okay, then we'll move on to item 7, which is the annual pretrial services report.
Thank you, Supervisor Ellenberg. My name is Matt Fisk. I'm the Director of Pretrial Services. I have about 12 slides, but I know that at the last meeting, mentioned you had some questions. So I thought maybe I could focus on the 3 key slides and then answer any questions you might have after that. I think it's up to me to share my screen. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay.
It's certainly not up to me.
Okay. So just over a year ago, I was asked to help with pretrial services as the pretrial service director, Aaron Johnson, moved to Texas. And it's been a really challenging and rewarding year. I just have to say, about everything else, I'm very grateful and honored to work with this staff. They've done acrobatics over the past year and found ways to do things. I think I'm going to move to my key slides, but to kind of paint a picture of what's happened with pretrial services this year, I think I'd like to spotlight one employee. We probably all have employees like this in our departments. This is Evelyn Garcia. She's that employee she was a longtime pretrial services officer. And for years, I'm told that she was encouraged to apply to become a supervisor. And she resisted that urge for a long time and finally succumbed to it. And it was a wonderful decision. Gary Hersig promoted her, or if it was Aaron Johnson. But this is the person who really doesn't see this as a job, sees it as a mission, a rewarding part of her life. She is the person that I go to. She says, if we just focus on one thing, that's mutual respect among one another and with our clients and with our partners, we'll figure out what we can do in this pandemic and in this time. And she is just a natural leader that I just want to take a moment to describe her to you. We have a lot of staff members like her who have followed her lead. I really appreciate her. One tangible example that she's helped us with is to engage with the public defender's office and the district attorney's office and the court. For years, she sat in court and watched how things operated. And so from a client load level basis, she understands the needs. She's the person that sits down with the client and listens to what's happening in their life. And then after the fact, reads the police reports and all the other information we have about that person. And then with that person forms a supervision plan. So what she did was basically, she helped us to put that together, but on a client load level. So we've been getting a lot of calls lately from other counties who got money from the state for pretrial services. They said, we've heard you do a great job. And we say, well, we're trying. What has worked well for you? And we said, well, there's only 50 of us, but we're mighty because we have something that's unusual. We share a consensus mission with our partners. I know I can call Laura Garnett at any moment or send her a text. She'll write me right back and give me advice. The public defender and the DA, they focus on what they can agree upon and move it forward. So the tangible example I wanted to share was we were trying to figure out how do we keep up when you double your supervision population in a year and triple it over 2 years. So you can see if you go back 2 years, there were about 1,000 people being supervised. We got up to 3,000. And we want to do this responsibly, and we want to focus on the people who most need our attention. So one of the things that Evelyn helped us to do was really take a client load level approach and work with the defense and the prosecution. And that means the ADO, the IDO, and the PDO, and all the private attorneys that the IDO has reached out to for us. And they've helped us to supervise these clients. Clients that have come out of compliance, they've called personally and kind of helped them to resume compliance, contact our office. We've literally sent hundreds of cases to the PDO and the IDO, ADO, and the DAO, and they've helped us to cycle through them, incentivizing people down and even off the caseload when they don't need the supervision any longer because they've been with us for months or even in some cases years, and helping us to focus our attention on those who really do need the help. So that really covers about the first part of our slide. We have great people that have focused this last year on what we can do. And when we start with what we can do, we find out we can do a lot more than it felt like we could do when this was kind of thrust upon us. The other thing is focusing on not just technology, but the tools we do have and techniques, how to use those tools in different ways. That's where TSS has come in. Jimmy Liang, the BI team, Dan Baldry. These people have taken a look. Rushane Actor is another one. They've taken a look at what we do from a technological and business standpoint and saw things that we couldn't see. And so they've taken our POPS system and some reports we have, and they've helped us to use them in a much different way. And so we're not up to speed on everything. We're mostly supervising people remotely, but for the electronic monitoring clients. But I can honestly say that we have more contact more frequently with the clients that we have than we did when they were coming in person. And I think in many cases that's better because there is a presumption of innocence. We don't want to be pulling people, especially during this pandemic, out into the community, cycling through the community if they don't need to be. We don't want to pull them away from their jobs either. But this has shifted to more of an impromptu remote supervision that's proved to be helpful. And so I went over some of these numbers. We had about 1,500 cases, 1,500 clients last time this year. Now we got up to 3,000, and with Evelyn and the PAR team's help, we've got it down to about 2,500 clients, starting to get it under control. And we have the clients that we really need to focus on for the most part. We're shifting some other clients that have been long-time compliant off of the caseload over the next couple of weeks. I'd like to emphasize that our success rates have remained. We've not seen a significant increase in rearrests during this mid-COVID timeframe so far. So the PAR team, again, that's the public defender, really the ADO, the IDO, and the district attorney's office, and of course the court. Judge Ryan, Judge Geffon, at a moment's notice, they help us to pivot our operations and try something new. And that's what's worked for us over the last few months. So the PAR team has been addressing clients as soon as they can, early on, individually. They've helped us to begin to right-size our client load and triage non-compliant clients and incentivize those who don't really need the supervision any longer. And the PAR team has also been tackling some systemic challenges, concerns, lag time, kind of bottlenecks that we weren't even really sure existed. And so that's been helpful. There have been opportunities amidst this crisis. So all this we've been able to do without any additional staff, although I would like to thank the board, the county executive office, and everybody for the support. We are adding 4 officers, which will help us to get our client loads to about 75 people per officer over the next couple of months. Okay, just to kind of quick recap to complete my presentation, everything's up as far as the workload goes, except for the screenings at the jail, because the bookings are down by about 1/3, so are the screenings at the jail. So we are going to be shifting some work to our jail staff to be more efficient. But the rest of the work, like I said, has doubled over the past year. It's more complex because it's remote. And that workload includes this, which I'd just like to emphasize, electronic monitoring. If you go back 3 years, we had 150 people on ankle bracelets. I checked the other day, we had over 700. About half of them have alcohol monitors, like you see in the bottom of the screen. The other half have GPS monitors. Some people have both, one on each leg. And it's been a very helpful tool to keep them productive and to help monitor and positive behavior reinforcement. We do need to manage that client load very closely because it's very labor intensive. One of the things that we're doing with the additional staff that we've been granted is assigning those cases to those officers to spread the client load more evenly and more manageable. And just last year, it's increased this year. this calendar year, but last year would have been about 120,000 jail days had the people actually been in jail with ankle bracelets. Now that's not true. That would not have necessarily happened, but I will say that having this tool in place does give the judges an additional way to assure safety, compliance, and court attendance. So it's been helpful so far. And I think that concludes the part that I'd like to share, but I'd like to field any questions you might have.
Matt, thanks so much. I really just want to commend your department for working creatively to meet the needs of your clients, even with the significant increase in caseload, which is not matched by an increase in staff. I love that you called Evelyn out. That's been quite the theme during this committee meeting today, of managers really lifting up and highlighting their team members, and we should have more of that, and it should be part of every meeting. So thank you so much for doing that. What other ways can your department maximize relationships with any other departments in public safety and justice to maintain client success under PTS supervision? Thinking about behavioral health, Office of Supportive Housing, SUTS, anything I'm not thinking of?
Yes, there are three things that we need to do. We need to leverage the willingness and the relationships and the resources that the Sheriff's Department has, as well as we're already working with probation to possibly share some clients that are already shared, but share them in kind of a different way and supervision-wise. We need to work closer with the Sheriff's Department in terms of having release teams at the jail to provide better, more strategic, safer, healthier transitional releases. We need to have releases in the morning from the jail lobbies and get them connected to services as early in the day as possible, and get them connected to the right services by co-locating with reentry, by co-working with reentry and behavioral health and others. We need to take advantage of all the services that reentry provides, as well as behavioral health. Basically, pretrial needs to do a better job of taking advantage of the help that's being offered to us.
I appreciate that perspective. And to me, one of the most valuable aspects of these cross-department committee meetings is that we are in the same Zoom room at the same time. Those departments can hear your concerns, and I'm hoping the sheriff, I'm just constantly scanning names here, that the sheriff is still with us and heard that, and there's something that we can do to increase that soft handoff, warm handoff from custody to pretrial. Is she here?
Yes, Supervisor. I'll probably have to get with Matt to find out what it is that he's referencing, because I know that we've had a lot of discussion about daytime releases and things like that. And, you know, the myriad of reasons why people need to be released from custody at certain times, and others can be per day. So I'll have to get with Mr. Fisk to find out exactly what he's referencing.
Great, and we'll look forward to hearing how that turns out. Thank you. Supervisor Wasserman.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Matt. I read his report, but that successes and challenges you have in pretrial justice on page 174, it's kind of what you used as the anchor for your report. Very, very well written. Really appreciated all the different, not only the information, Matt, but the explanations, because we're just supervisors. We don't have the skills of any of you department heads, any of the people actually providing the services. And so often when I hear your reports, even after my 10th year as a supervisor, each and every time we have these meetings and we get department reports, I learn something new. And I really appreciate it, and I appreciate your attitude. I felt like I was in a locker room. We were getting a pregame speech to get out there. And I think the collaboration that Chair Ellenberg referred to is spot on. Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike. Do we have any public speakers on this item? Oh, Sylvia, go ahead. And please, if anybody else, I hope that you'll do the same thing. It's hard for me to remember to look at the blue hands. If you can physically wave around, that's super helpful. So I make sure not to go past you. Thanks, Sylvia.
So I also wanted to acknowledge, of course, all the great work that Pretrial Services is doing. I know that we all, as the Justice Partners team, recognize the benefit we all have from having Matt as the director and the great team that he has. He's also incredibly modest, and so he didn't point out, obviously, the success that department has had in monitoring and in supervising despite his increased caseload. And I think that's on 180 of our packet, and that is such an important thing to identify because, for one, obviously the court should rely on pretrial supervision significantly. I think it's an important part of our new transition into how we move into our move forward from this COVID period. And notably, this almost 20% success rate is really significant. I also can't stress enough how important this data is for us moving forward because, in our justice system, we all operate on this sort of gut feeling and anecdote and just based on our experience personally, but there's nothing more critical than data. And I do hope that, he's sharing this information with the court. I know that obviously the DA is participating and knows about the incredible success that we have in supervising clients, especially low-level offenders out in the community, and then being able to successfully bringing them back to court. So I think this is really an important part that we can't emphasize enough. And I hope it marks a way of us moving forward in a new direction, especially now that we cannot rely on jail as a exclusive alternative for our cases. I also want to emphasize that delay is already built into our system. We have out of custody cases that will be delayed for some time. So we really cannot afford to have a significant number of in custody pretrial detainees for us to process in our court system. It is too expensive, and the delay is just going to be too much. And the burden on all of us to have to manage it and process that is going to be significant. So I just wanted to thank Matt for his incredible work, for the great report that he has, and also for just being a great system partner that we can rely on. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sylvia. Are there any other comments from our virtual dais before I ask again for public comment? Molly. You're on mute.
Trying to unmute. Yeah, I want to echo some of what Sylvia said and really call Matt out. Because our PAR program launched last fall, we've had a really unique opportunity to work with Matt, and he has been such a great partner working with our team on the weekends, in the evening, side by side with the sheriff, trying to get folks out during this pandemic. But the other thing about him is he's really taking a deep dive look at folks who are in jail for 1 or 2 days who maybe don't need to be in jail at all. If in fact they're going to be released in 24 or 48 hours, aren't we better off and safer really to keep them out of the facility in the first place? So I have really appreciated, and consider Matt a friend, but I have really appreciated the work partnership over the last year, and I know our PAR team loves him. So thank you, Matt. And thank you, Supervisor Ellenberg.
Thank you, Public Defender O'Neill. Anybody else? I think that's it. Public comment on this item.
We do have one speaker, Madam Chair.
Okay, let's have the speaker.
Our next speaker is Scott Largent. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Thank you, everyone. Scott Largent. I do always appreciate listening to Matt chime in, kind of says it how he sees it. And the most important thing that he said today was that warm handoff. I have physically seen that twice at the jail, once at San Jose Police Department. I want to see it a lot more. I think people need somebody to hold their hand when they get out of the Santa Clara County Jail to be able to navigate the system. And basically the warning signs not to turn left. Because if you go towards Spring Street, towards the FAA crash zone, you're going to be breaking the law within 10 minutes. You're going to be smoking meth within about 15 minutes. And that place is a war zone. Then if you make the bad decision of getting on the light rail, you're going to end up down at St. James Park. These are all places you want to avoid. And that's why we need people out in front of the jail to help people. Now, where these people end up is behind the county building, utilizing it as a restroom, trying to find charging outlets. You guys see it all the time, and that's where people are ending up. And the reason I know all this is because when COVID hit, I was homeless again. I stayed on the front of the county property for about 6 weeks in a tent. And then I got a van, and I live across the street in your county parking lot because it is a safe environment for me. I can't go down the street. I can't go to a shelter. I must remain sober to be a dad. But we need to help people. We're sending them, you know, it's like that old Atari game, you know, where you're swinging across the ropes. I forgot what it was even called. But that's like the war zone people have to go through. They got to dodge one side to the other. And, you know, that's not okay. And we should have restrooms, okay? I keep saying that. I am tired of seeing poop everywhere. We're a pay-to-poop county. We need to start putting in more bathrooms, more restrooms. Keep saying it. You guys see it on the side of your buildings. Thank you.
That concludes our speakers.
Thank you very much. And we will move on to our last agenda item, which is number 8, Neighborhood Safety Unit update.
Great, and if I can, thank you, Madam President. If I could introduce Charmaine Moran, who's a program manager and just the most amazing leader in this effort, which you'll see. But I want to just frame it a little bit when you listen to this presentation compared to Dr. Child's presentation. Dr. Child's talking about kids that have been arrested, their families have been impacted, there's victims that have been impacted. It's very far reaching, right? It's like a ripple that goes through a community that harms the community. And what Charmaine is, and we do really well with that group, and we bring them services and we work really hard. What Charmaine is doing is really preventing all of that stuff that Holly was talking about from happening in the first place. So when you hear this, kind of look at it through that lens, please. Take it away.
Thank you, Chief. Good afternoon, Supervisor Ellenberg, Supervisor Wasserman, members of the committee. Thank you for giving us space in your agenda to present on the Neighborhood Safety Unit. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can you all see that? Great. We're here today to kind of give you a quick overview of our fiscal year 20 performance data, as well as our COVID response efforts. Just to preface some of our work, as Chief Garnett stated, the Neighborhood Safety Unit really is a primary prevention initiative housed within the probation department. We take a public health lens in our work, so we utilize public health data, we utilize public health approach to race equity in our work. And in our report, we kind of outline in detail some of the collaboration efforts that we do. One of the reasons why I think we are so successful is because our whole program structure is built on creating authentic, trusting relationships, both in community and with our partners across sectors. So we have strong partnerships with both the Gilroy Police Department as well as the San Jose Police Department. As many of you know, just to remind those who don't, our efforts are focused in zip code 95122 and 95020, particularly in the Valley Palms, King Tully area, and then in East Gilroy at the San Isidro Park. So I want to make this quick, and I hope if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those. So we're going to give you a quick overview of what our COVID-19 response efforts. I think NSU was in a particular advantageous position to pivot our operations, our programming, because we have really strong relationships in the communities that we serve. And so one of the things I think that we should be emphasizing as we respond to community need during a pandemic is that no one agency can do that alone. And no one agency should do that without having a real good understanding of what's happening in those communities, especially those that we look at that have high rates of positivity for COVID-19. And we know that in East Gilroy and in East San Jose, that's the case. So some of the things that we've been focusing on since March, really a week after shelter in place was initiated, are expanding our food distribution efforts, addressing food insecurity, not only on the ground, but in South County, we dove a little bit deeper to identify what are some of the root causes of food insecurity and what are some of the policy changes we could suggest to the South County Task Force policy team on ways that they could decrease food insecurity in that community. We also focused our efforts on increasing access to diaper and formula. First Five has a wonderful system for doing that, and we partnered with them both in Gilroy and more intensely in Valley Palms. One of the things that I think, if those of you who know Jolene Smith, she's mentioned that it is very difficult for a family who's in shelter in place, who has perhaps more than 1 or 2 or 3 children, to go and pick up diapers at a designated time at a designated space. And so what we've done, and this is just our way of working in community, is we bring those resources into the community. And so we developed a really great partnership with First Five, such that every month we have a diaper and formula distribution inside the Valley Palms apartment complex. And then we've also been able to expand our partnership because First Five can't do it all. And there's a lot of private organizations out there who are willing to donate formula and diapers. And so we've been able to expand our work in this area. We've also been distributing emergency essential supply kits that include sanitizing, PPE, household cleaners, feminine products, shampoo, conditioner, sort of the things that families spend a lot of money on. And as their income is dramatically reduced due to the pandemic, we've been, we took really the lead on community and asking what are some of the things that they would like to see. And those emergency supply kits are provided by a combination of a lot of people, so it's not just us. And then also another thing we've been focusing on lately is Valley Palms was the first pilot site for a neighborhood level testing for the county's EOC department, and we were able to test, as reported in our report, 180 people. That was lower than expected, but I think there were some really great lessons learned that came from that first ever neighborhood level testing site. And I'm happy to share what those lessons learned are, but they are definitely informing the public health department as they look at testing strategies in East Gilroy. It's not in our report, but I would like you all to know that we are working closely with public health to hire between 10 and 20 promotoras from the San Isidro Nueva Vida leadership team, who will be the public health's outreach arm for COVID-19 testing, and they're exploring as well a testing site at San Isidro Park. So it's super exciting. All right, just a little bit of data. We wanted to kind of summarize what this looks like. And as I mentioned, one of the ways that we've been so efficient in responding to COVID-19 is expanding our partnerships. And so in 95122, we expanded our base, our partnership, our relationships with other organizations that we hadn't already established by 8. So we developed 8 new relationships. And then in Gilroy, we expanded that to 5. So those are behind the scenes, staff working together to try to identify what are the needs and how do we respond. Through those expanded partnerships and through our food distribution, emergency supply kit, and other response efforts, we served 925 individuals, and in 95020 in the San Isidro Park area, 210. In our distributions, so this is the food distribution line. You'll notice that the distributions that we're identifying here are through our partnership with Second Harvest Silicon Valley. And so in this, you'll see that We served 3,394 through 3 distributions. So Valley Palms is conducting a monthly distribution for Q4, but in Q3, they actually conducted more than that. There was 1 month they conducted 2. But you can see that's a large amount of people that come and line up and get food. And we're doing that inside the complex, which is really exciting. And then in San Isidro Park, we actually did this at a nearby community center, but we expanded food distribution there, and that took a lot of effort and a lot of coordination with our partners, but we did it and we're very proud of that. And so we were able to serve 1,000 people during that time. Our daily nutritional program is a partnership with our school district. So Eastside Union High School District delivers daily food to Valley Palms, and they've provided over 65, so that's like 2.5 months or 3 months of daily nutritional programming. And they've served a duplicate total of 16,575. That's a 255 average per person a day. So those are children who come to the Valley Palms FRC, they sit outside, or they take their food and they go back home. And sometimes it's just the parents who come and pick up food and they go back to their apartment, no questions asked. So it's a really great example of our partnership with local school districts. We also do the same in Gilroy. So at San Isidro Park, we were able to expand our food insecurity work by implementing nutritional services with Gilroy Unified School District at San Isidro Park. I'm happy to report that I found out yesterday that USDA has waived the requirement to require school districts to ask for a student ID when picking up food. And that would have been a huge barrier to our families. We're very happy that they've waived that. And so our understanding is beginning next week, our food nutritional programs will be back up and running. They took a pause for about a week or 2 because of this federal issue. So that's our summary of our COVID response efforts in our partner communities. So I'd like to kind of pivot towards NSU program performance summary. This again is an annual summary of what NSU really focuses on. We measure a lot of things in the community. We have an annual report that I hope this committee will get a copy of, which is usually available at the beginning of the year. But these are the targets that we set every year. And we have increased those targets by 10%, almost 10% each year that we've been serving these communities. So without going into too much detail, you'll see that many of the targets we've set, we've way over exceeded. And this is because we've expanded our partnerships almost, just in a way that has resulted in us serving more people. So I'm going to just go through a few. The youth attending NSU sponsored after school activities, a lot of this data was collected pre-COVID. Much of the activities we do are during the summer months, so between July, August, and September, and then we really ramp up our partnerships with schools. So there's a lot of school-based after-school activities that occur in the first semester. So that's why you see that number. We do expect it to go down this year, obviously, due to COVID. Residents attending sponsored classes, obviously that went down, and we do think that that's because of COVID. Much of our calendaring happens during the latter half in community in the springtime when the weather's great, so we expected that. And then you'll see attendees at parent-teacher neighborhood association meetings. This is really how we blend our ELAC and our resident leadership groups so that they are working in collaboration. It's one way to build that fabric between the school and the community. And so we've been really working on strengthening our partnership with our resident leaders and our school districts. And then I'm going to move on here a little bit under leadership class attendees. In 95122, we were able to increase our leadership class. That means we're increasing our base of leaders, so that's exciting. And then the 400%, that's really due to we sponsored a lot more community events at the beginning of this beginning of last fiscal year than we expected. And that's just because we had a stronger partnership, I think, especially with Eastside Union High School District, the San Jose Police Department, and all the other kind of 95122 events that are happening with public health and East Peace Partnership. All right, on to Gilroy. You'll see again, I'm not going to go through each one, but we again exceeded in those same categories that we thought we would, the number of youth, increasing or expanding our partnership with Gilroy Unified to align with their PBIS, or their Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports Plan. That's something that we've felt is a really useful way to integrate a school climate initiatives with the community safety work that we do in the community that surrounds that school. So that's something that we're really proud of as well. And again, we've increased our base in San Isidro Nueva Vida, which means we have more people coming and stepping up to be leaders and participate in our leadership development work. And then in San Isidro, I mean, Supervisor Wasserman, you know, in this community, it is on fire. I mean, other than COVID aside, usually during the summer months, the San Isidro Park has a monthly party in the park. We co-sponsor the National Night Out, which was canceled this year. But again, this data is reporting on the fiscal year data, so you'll see a large number there. All right, so this is sort of the last slide of my presentation. I just love this slide. I don't get to show a lot of pictures, so I do like to be able to do that. Our food distribution in Gilroy, I don't think I mentioned this, but that our food distributions are co-led or independently led by the residents. So we're sort of a support arm for that. We volunteer. Our team and many others in our department go and volunteer and help distribute the food, but the residents are the ones who are actually coordinating it, documenting the data, providing that information back to Second Harvest Food Bank. This picture is an example of our expanded partnership with San Isidro Nueva Vida, the Cesar Chavez Gym in East Gilroy, and those are two of our resident leaders in San Isidro Nueva Vida. And then finally, the synthetic soccer field at Valley Palms was completed. This is an old picture. There has been some softer fencing that's been installed, as well as some goalposts, and we requested that they install a water fountain and some benches. But this really was a 3 to 4 year long process. We didn't know how we were going to get to this point of transforming this once dilapidated tennis court to a space where community can use and really increase their access to positive recreational opportunities. We have a lot of plans on how we're going to activate this space, and you know, Supervisor Ellenberg, just for your information, the developer paid for this, so we didn't actually have to find any kind of other funding to do this. We partnered with KDF through the TEFRA process, which is outlined in our report, but there it is. So that's my report for the Neighborhood Safety Unit. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Charmaine, I know Chief Garnett already sung your praises before your report, but I need to do the same because I know how hard you work, and we talked about that soccer field 4 years ago, well before I was sitting in this seat, and I just I can't stop smiling to see that it's been done, and can't wait to see the activation. You really do such tremendous work in these communities, and what that also shows me is that these communities, and probably many, many more like them, need this kind of investment and this kind of empowerment of their own residents to be able to self-determine what safety looks like to them in the community, what a thriving neighborhood looks like in their vision, and to provide the scaffolding and support to get there, but allow the people who live there, who call the community home, the space to lead and design it. So I'm really appreciative of your work and your leadership, and thank you for all of that. How have the contracts with probation for NSU services been impacted by budget cuts in the last round, and are we concerned about any risks to services in the next round?
No, Supervisor. This is Mariel Caballero responding. We did not target any of these contracts for either downsizing or elimination. All of the contracts are moving forward, and we're actually the Neighborhood Safety Unit Fellowship Program is actually funded through JJCPA now. So the general fund contribution is actually going more towards the leadership development, which is harder to fund often. And so I think it's a really great use of our funds, because I think as you you've talked about, you know, that self-determination is really what's going to change these communities, not something that other people come in and bring.
Right, and that's the self-sustaining piece, is to build that internal leadership. A piece that was in the report, but Charmaine, either I didn't hear you, I may have just not heard you mention it, but the digital connectivity issues. What is the story both at Valley Palms and in the San Ysidro neighborhood? What access do families have to internet and or Wi-Fi? And if the answer is what I fear it is, that it's not good, what are we doing, or what can we be doing to support those neighborhoods?
Yeah, thank you, Supervisor Ellenberg. We did not highlight our work in our coalition to end the digital divide in South County, particularly because we sort of launched it in August. But to answer your question, in Valley Palms, internet connection is strong. We have not heard any issues from students or families directly that indicate they don't have access to the technical tools they need, or they don't have internet access. Eastside Union High School District has done a wonderful job at ensuring not only internet access, but also that every child, every student has the necessary equipment they need. South County is a bit more challenging, one, because it's topography. Students are served both in sort of a suburban area that does have somewhat of a lack of internet access, and then also in the more rural areas in our migrant camps that do have very limited access. So we, in response to this, we've actually launched what we're calling the Coalition to End the Digital Divide, and Supervisor Wasserman, you'll be hearing all about this at our next South County Task Force policy meeting. But we partnered very strongly with Gilroy Unified School District to do two things. One, we've launched a parent support network that's comprised of community volunteers across sectors in South County, particularly in Gilroy. So these are folks that are just people who want to volunteer and help coach parents on how to use technology. As all of you know, our schools and school districts, their resources are stretched really thin, and they don't have the capacity necessarily to sit down with a parent that doesn't know how to use a computer. And so what we did is we launched a network of about 40 volunteers. They were deployed for their first assignment during Chromebook distributions throughout Gilroy Unified School District in August. And we collected a lot of data from that. We got a lot of feedback from those parents. We are moving forward with providing in-person, socially distanced, safe coach-ups for parents. And we're piloting our first initiative at Elliott Elementary School, which is located in East Gilroy. So always kind of keeping a lens on the equity issues that exist or that don't exist in South County. And then we also have a secondary coalition focusing on migrant student connectivity. There are some concerns that migrant students are not able to connect to their Zoom classes, and the hotspots that were used are, unfortunately, they don't work very well. And so we're looking at satellite hotspots and working closely with the Santa Clara County Office of Education on that issue.
I am glad to hear all of that. Thank you so much. Supervisor Wasserman, do you have any comments on this report or questions?
I do, Madam Chair. I have several.
Well, go for it.
Thank you very much. First, I want to tell Chief Garnett what she already knows about Charmaine. Charmaine is one of the best relationship builders I have ever had the pleasure to see in action and work. We started up the South County Task Force, I don't know, 8 years ago, 7 years ago, whatever time goes by, 6 years ago, whatever it was. I've been on it since day one. And Charmaine's been there, and the stuff that Charmaine gets done with the resources she has is absolutely amazing. And the collaboration, getting together, for instance, with Gilroy Parks. Charmaine mentioned earlier in her report about all the activity at the parks. Well, when I got there, and when Charmaine got there, and when the county put in funding, and the DA, and we collaborated with the cities, and with the school districts. I want to give a shout out to Superintendent Deborah Flores. those parks you did not want to be in when the sun set. They weren't safe for adults or children. And the collaboration between the PD and the DAs and Chief Garnett's office, all the volunteers, the rec department, the parks department, all of that over the years took those parks back for the community. So now there are handball courts and a little basketball and a little barbecue, and it's too bad this year's festival got called off because of COVID. But that's the transformation that's taken place in the 95020 zip code, which I know very well. It's in my district. It's a lot of similarities with 95122. Not as many people, but a higher per capita rate of all kind of things that aren't real attractive. Currently, COVID is running at 9% positivities when everybody else is 2 to 3%. So this poor community that, and I don't mean poor financially, but it is poor per capita. I mean this unfortunate community that has had all these other things to battle with, from gangs on down, is now 2 and 3 times more likely to contract COVID for a myriad of reasons. And again, a shout out to the superintendent, Dr. Flores, regarding the digital divide. I swear to God, she has gotten out there, and if Charmaine was with her knocking on doors, I wouldn't be surprised. But she got out there knocking on doors and saying we need to get every kid access to the internet. And the school district down there has done an incredible job. And I know she's not done yet, but I will bet, to Charmaine's point, that 99% of people there have internet access. And now with this stay at home and learn until they can return to schools, it's more important than ever as far as being connected. Charmaine, thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. Don't go anywhere for at least 2.5 years. And I really appreciate all you've done. Thank you very much. Are you going to tell me I was muted now, Susan? Okay.
No, I was going to ask if anybody else wants to compliment Charmaine. Any comments from anyone on the dais? If not, I will go to public comment.
We do have one speaker, Madam Chair. Our next speaker is Scott Largent. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak, and the timer will start when you begin speaking.
Thank you, everyone. I'll keep it short and simple, kind of loading up to get out of here. Let's just do a better job on warning the youth of our community right now about this protesting gig. That's just about it. I'll make it short and simple. Please let them know not to make these mistakes right now. It's not a good gig, okay? And I'm reaching out and just asking you guys to do something. And all of you have the opportunity right now to condemn the violence that happened at Sam Licardo's house with arson, everything that happened. You guys know it. So it's a great opportunity. Let's not remain silent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Item 9 was on consent. Item 10 is announcements. Do any department heads or members of the committee have an announcement that they would like to share? If you're waving and I'm not seeing you, just go ahead and take yourself off of mute and start talking.
Well, looks like we're good.
All right. Then with that, we will adjourn to the next regular meeting on Thursday, October 1st, 2020 at 2 p.m. The published agenda says in the Board of Supervisors chambers. I think that is unrealistically optimistic, but at any rate, we will see you on October 1st. Take care, everyone. We stand adjourned.
Safe, everyone.
Madam Chair.
Bye.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.